All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to the Frantic Talks podcast, episode 26. I am your host, Frantic J3, followed by my lovely, as always, co-host.
Grunt.
And we are
Hello.
here to talk about video games.
And junk.
All right. So, we got a lot to talk about, and we're going to do it in a lot less time than you're used to, and I think everyone's going to rejoice. But let's go over something really quick. First, episode 26. Do you know what that means, Grunt?
Hmm. I think I do. It's like our halfway point of us doing this for a year or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Or I think about 6 months ago we might have started this thing, somewhere around there. I don't think we've skipped a Saturday, so 26 straight weeks is half a year, everybody. So, woo, applause, yay, we made it.
Yay.
So with that being said, after half a year, we're gonna redo the podcast or change it up, however you want to put it. After long discussion with not only Grunt but a few other people, and not including or not limited to, but including my girlfriend and I think one of my other friends, I think we all kind of agreed that the podcast might be a little long. Now, typically podcasts are about an hour long, and that's fine. A lot of people enjoy that. But what I think we're going to go for from now on is keeping it under about 45 minutes. And what this allows for is it allows for us to change how we talk about things on here. And what I mean by that is we're going to focus more on just one specific topic. And to quote my girlfriend, whose name is Emily, by the way, to quote her, she said, "Think of it this way: the book is video games. This week is chapter one, which is on topic A. Next week is chapter two, topic B, et cetera, et cetera." And I thought that was a very good way to look at it. We talk about video games all the time when you're and junk. So we typically tend to cover Destiny, Halo, and then whatever crazy story was happening at the time. Well, we're still going to theoretically cover those things, but we're going to do them very briefly. We're going to run down like this week's news or whatever within the first, I'd say, 10 minutes or so, you think, Grant?
I think probably.
Yeah. So we'll run through that stuff in the first like 10 minutes or so, and then the next 30 or so minutes we'll discuss one specific topic. That way we have a little bit more to write about on the website, and we'll have not so much of a broad narrative. We'll just have a straight down to the point podcast.
Less long-winded rants. Plus one if you get that reference.
Yeah, if you got that. If you didn't, last week's episode was called Long Winded Rants. I think naming it that had me rethink it. That's where this thought came from. It was like,
Right.
oh man, let's reflect on 25 podcasts because we've done it for half a year now. And I
Yep.
think that was the main thing I took away from it. Is they kept getting longer at one point once the Destiny updates were coming out. Because we really wanted to talk about that. Because it got to about an hour and a half once we were said and done. And
Yeah. That was insane.
so yeah, but in other words, let's get into the new structure. Hopefully, you enjoy how we're going to change things up here, and you'll like the shorter length. If you aren't a fan of the shorter length, I must apologize, but it's going to be just better for everybody, I think, in the long run. So, that being said, Grunt, how was your week?
Pretty great. Gotta
Thank
kick
you.
things off. On Tuesday I gotta go to Cedar Rapids and see Pop Evil, Rob Zombie, and Disturbed in concert.
Oh,
So
nice.
that
That'll
was
be
pretty
fun.
awesome.
Sounds
Uh,
awesome.
it was funny because the fire alarm went off right before Disturbed performed their song they're most known for right now, "Sound of Silence." Their cover of who was it?
Simon and
Uh,
Garfunkel,
yeah, that. Thank you.
which is a great song, and their cover is very good, by the way, if you haven't heard it.
Yeah. The fire alarm for the venue went off, and that was interesting. It's also interesting to note that technically when the fire alarm goes off, you evacuate the building. No one moved.
That sounds about
So,
right.
yeah.
There's a magic event, like basically the same thing. It was this really big vendor hall where they were doing a big tournament, like probably 2,500 people, and the alarm went off, and some people left, some didn't, and it was basically the people who didn't leave didn't want to leave their cards, and I get that. There's like a couple $1,000s worth of cards in this because it was a big tournament of like more expensive stuff. So I've heard of similar events where it's just like I'm not fucking leaving, like
Oh, yeah.
so.
Yeah. But I don't think there actually was a fire. I think just, someone pulled the alarm to be funny and yeah,
Yeah, I
whatever.
gotcha. Hmm.
Um, Otherwise, most of my week has been spent doing odd and end things. Really,
Awesome.
the only game I've played has been Neverwinter. It's basically just a playable version of Dungeons and Dragons. You've heard
Cool.
this in past episodes. You've heard our stories of playing D&D with a few of our other friends over, online. Since I clearly don't live in Ohio,
And I don't live in Illinois.
also that. Um, but I find it humorous that my cleric I started in Neverwinter had 10 times better base stats than the cleric I currently have in the actual version of D&D we're playing through.
hmm
So the only thing, it was not as intelligent. It was, I think my cleric has like a intelligence of like 19 now, something like that, maybe 17, 19, somewhere around there.
hmm
Um, my original, my Neverwinter cleric started off with like 13. So
Gotcha. Well, I'm sorry that he's doing a lot better than you want, or at least you wish he would be doing.
yeah,
um,
I'm sad about that.
so you just only been really been playing that.
Yeah, I did. God, I think it was Thursday night. I hit up uh, Vault of Glass hard mode and normal Crota
Oh
with a few
boy.
friends. So that was fun. I haven't. It's been a little while since I've done the Vault of Glass, so that was fun. But
Well, cool.
otherwise, that's pretty much been it.
Gotcha. Well, I had an interesting week. If you follow us on Twitter, you might have seen Saturday after the podcast was recorded. Even if you didn't listen to the podcast live, you might have seen that I was going live on my buddy's Twitch account, where we played two games, Dark Souls 3 and Mortal Kombat. Now, you may have seen plenty of gameplay from these games already, so what was so interesting about us? Well, we played it a little differently. I've never played Dark Souls, any of the games ever. Never played a single Dark Souls game. So this is my first attempt at playing it, and my friend, his name is Corky, and his Twitch account is ocorky, just O and then Corky. He streams on there pretty regularly. But anyways, he was my coach because he's really good at the game. And every time I died, I had to take a drink of whatever drink I had. And what I did have was a lot of tequila and Sprite, mainly tequila though. And that was how my nights was spent. And then more I had a good amount of drinks. I think I ended up dying 10 plus times, so that was fun. But I got to the first official boss and couldn't beat him. And then it was like, we've been playing this for like 3 hours. Let's switch. Hopped on to Mortal Kombat, and the rules were if you were defeated, like you lose your match, you take a drink. If the match ended in a fatality, which you have to memorize at the beginning, you cannot pause the game and look at fatalities before. Uh, like you have to memorize at the beginning of the match. You can look at the moves list for like the first 10 seconds or so is how we were kind of playing it, but you can't look at the fatality at the end or do a faction kill and get it to count because those are really easy to pull off. If you got fatality, you take an extra drink. If you got brutality, you take an extra drink on top of that. So you ended up taking 3 drinks if you got brutality. Well, we
Oh
did
my
we did
god.
not have any brutalities, but we did have a few fatalities. And I say we, even though they were all performed on me.
So, needless to say, you got
I
a
got
little hammered that night.
oh, absolutely. I was trashed. Like passed out on my freaking couch, and then I think Corky and Emily, my girlfriend, I think they. I keep saying my girlfriend as if you guys probably don't know who she is anymore. I'm not trying to validate that I have one. I'm just pointing it out. If you forgot, but I think they kept playing for a little bit. So that was my weekend, and then this week after talking about renting video games, I decided to go rent 2 games. Because there's a video right around the corner from me. I rented Dragon Age Inquisition and Final Fantasy Type Zero and Type Zero HD. I liked Dragon Age. It was very interesting, but I felt overwhelmed once I got into it beyond the first like tutorial because it was just like, all right, here's like 30 quests and you have to command your own little. You
Yep.
have to go into the war room, and then it seemed a little overwhelming. But overall, I liked the graphics. It looked very pretty. Like overall, just a beautiful game, and I like the abilities I had, and I will probably rent that game again to try and keep going in to see if I truly want to purchase it. Final Fantasy, I did not care for. I hated it actually, which is really weird because this one got really good reviews. I looked it up later. I was like, wow, people really like this game, and I didn't.
Hmm.
But anyways, it was basically to get a long story short, it threw you into the game after 30 minutes of cutscenes and just was like, here's how you play the game. Like 10 little pop-ups happen every time you take a step. Like do this, do that, do this, do that. And then it throws you against some not so difficult enemies, but some of the gameplay mechanics just felt like they weren't refined. And the worst part was I couldn't turn off auto centering the camera. So every time
Hmm.
I was running and I
Oh
looked to the left, it centered again, and I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't figure it out. So I did
no.
not enjoy it.
Nope, no way could I stand that. I I would probably not play the game after sitting there through 30 minutes of cutscenes. I'd like watching cutscenes, so that probably wouldn't bother me.
Hmm.
But doggone it, I just got the game. I want to play it.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch the game.
It,
That's
it
what
was
Twitch
it
is for.
was really weird because like I turned on the game after I installed it. It ran through like 10 minutes of cutscenes, and I was like, all right, that's the setup. Okay, it gets me the loading. It gets me the main menu. It's like new game. Click it, and then it just continues where those cutscenes left off, as if why did I not just click new game and see all those cutscenes? I don't understand. And then it just kept going and going. So whatever.
Oh
I
man.
Like I said, I didn't care for it. But anyways, uh, other than that, I started a new podcast. Some of you might have seen that. If you have subscribed to Frantic Talks on iTunes and don't follow the magic side of Frantic Talks, you might have seen a podcast pop up in the feed, and you will probably continue to see them pop up. I'm starting a new podcast where I record myself talking when I go to work. So I drive there in the morning, and then when I leave work in the evening, I drive home. I record two separate parts of a podcast, and it's just discussing magic related stuff because we don't have a magic podcast, and there's a lot of things I can talk about that we don't write about. So it's just inspired by the lead designer of Magic the Gathering. His name is Mark Rosewater. He does a very similar podcast series where he records two 30 to 40 minute long podcasts each in a week where he drives to work. It takes him like 30 or 40 minutes to drive to work because he has to drop his kid off at school or whatever. So he records and talks about design, but I record and talk about more tech stuff and cool little decks I see. So if you're interested in that and want to listen to me ramble even more than I already do, you can check that out. It's actually been a lot of fun setting up and recording with my phone in my hand as I drive because it makes my drive to work interesting instead of just sometimes boring. So yeah.
And you're a decent human being for using your turd signal. Stop
Yeah.
that.
If you ever hear it in the background, and I quote myself here, I was like, if you ever hear my turn signal in the background, it's because I use that because I'm a decent human being. So
Sure.
anyways, so speaking of new content, there's a lot of stuff for the Frantic Talk site that I want to mention real quick that we're planning on doing and trying to get in the works. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to give away too much because some of it isn't 100% and other parts are just like cool ideas. But I know for a fact that the 100% parts are I want to get the redesign of the website finished, which does exist and it's in a development environment, but I just haven't had time to do it. And then, well, haven't had time is not the right term. Haven't had the motivation, I guess, is the appropriate way to put that. And the other piece is I definitely want to be releasing at least one article a week on top of the podcast. And that's kind of why we're restructuring the podcast so we don't talk about everything we could be talking about. So,
Also, if you divulge all the information about all the new content, then there's no surprise,
it's
really.
like getting all your Christmas presents spoiled before they happen.
Right.
No one knew about that podcast until I posted it beyond Luke, who writes on the Magic side. I told him I'm going to do it, and he said it sounds cool. And then I got home and said I recorded a prologue, and he was like, "Oh, that's awesome." So
Yeah.
um,
See,
he and
I
I are
don't even
also
know about it.
discussing
Didn't
some
even know
stuff.
about it.
Yeah, I didn't even tell Grunt. That's how surprising it was. Uh, Grunt didn't know, and then Luke and I are discussing a couple other things for the Magic side of the site that, if it all comes to fruition, is going to be amazing. And then there's one other secret, quote unquote, thing for the Frantic Talk site that I don't want to talk about because it's not 100% set in stone, but I think it will be. If it does happen, it'll be great. So Grunt knows what that is. Don't worry, he knows. He's in the loop. So,
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to add, Grunt, before we run through the news of the past week or so?
Uh, Not specifically, not that I can think of.
Okay. All right. So, I got a couple of bullet points here before we get into our main topic of the podcast. But first and foremost, we tend to talk about Destiny a lot on here, so let's start with that. There are two things
Oh.
with Destiny. First, there is a heavy ammo glitch that is ruining, quote unquote, the Crucible. So much so they had to cancel Trials of Osiris this weekend, which is crazy to think about. Have they ever had to do that?
Not really. The only when they've had a bug that really throws off the balance of the game, they it was the hunter's quiver for
Hmm.
his tether, or their tether, I should say, rather. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it basically allowed you to fire like infinite. With quiver, you're only allowed to fire your shadow shot 3 times. But I think, if I remember correctly, I think it allowed you to fire it pretty much as many times as you wanted to.
Yeah, in the article where they talk about how this glitch works, they mention the infinite shadow shot glitch. They don't
Right.
really
All right.
call it, but
Yeah.
just explain really quick what the glitch is basically the King's Fall raid weapons have that ability to automatically reload when you stow it for a short time,
Cocoon.
uh,
Name
which
of
is
the
called
perk.
Cocoon. If you combine this with Clown Cartridge, which is a perk that's randomly rolled on snipers, rockets, hand cannons, or shotguns, which is upon reloading, grants the player 25% chance to load a magazine with 20% more rounds. Basically, if you if you have the King's Fall weapon equipped and then this Clown cartridge equipped, if you cycle between the weapons, for example, that have the Clown cartridge perk or Cocoon in the Cocoon perk, allowing it to proc, basically you can just get a crap ton of ammo on your weapons that shouldn't have ammo. And this article on Game Rant is where I'm seeing it. They have a screenshot of 50 rocket launcher shots,
Yeah,
which is nuts.
yeah.
So
Shadow Shot. The Shadow Shot glitch wasn't that bad because when they found it, they didn't cancel trials or anything. They just disabled the Shadow Shot. That's or
mm,
the not the Shadow Shot, the quiver. They just disabled. You couldn't select it.
yeah,
So for them to cancel an entire weekend of trials, it's pretty.
It's pretty heavy, I think. So
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's good that they did that because, as they mentioned in the weekly update, we don't want to have a map nicknamed Rocket Town. So
yeah, that's the issue there. Hopefully they can get it fixed soon, so your Crucible journey isn't so terrible. The other news with Destiny, and this is going to be spoiler alert because the new set expansion, the new fall expansion or whatever, potentially was leaked. So if you don't want to hear this, fast forward about 20 or so seconds. We're just going to name it, and then that's about it. So spoiler alert. One, two, three. It's called, what is it called, Grunt?
Rise of Iron is what I have seen.
Yeah. So Rise of Iron, potentially the new Destiny expansion for the fall, and we don't know anything beyond that. Probably Iron Banner and Lord Salad Bar related.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
I'm
So
just I'm applying the same blanket statement I do to every possible leak about any game ever. Is I won't actually believe it until the developer comes out and says, "Hey, this is what it is."
mhm.
So
So yeah, take that with a grain of salt or a grain of sand, whatever the actual statement is. I don't remember.
grain of salt.
Is it a grain of salt? Okay. So yeah, I didn't want to really delve in further into that. There's not much else to be said. So spoilers are done now. We're going to move on to also this week was Doom was released.
I'm gonna backtrack
Oh
before
yeah.
we continue on Doom. It's worth noting. I've tried to say this with as straight a face as I possibly can.
Oh
If you
yeah, I know
use
what you're going to
the
go to.
heavy ammo glitch, I don't advise doing it. But if you want to be that guy or that person and use it, you're not going to get banned. Unlike another game that we know of.
I wonder what that would be.
I don't know.
Hmm. Well, it most certainly isn't Doom, even though that got released this past week.
Right.
Because I'm really good at segues. And Doom got released this week. I don't know, Grant, if you've seen any gameplay for it. Uh,
Just some clips I've seen of friends off of Xbox Live that have uh, taken some, but that's been it.
I
Nothing,
I hung out with
nothing in depth.
Gotcha. I hung out
Looks
with
fun.
hung out with my buddies last night, play Rock Band and stuff. But beforehand, we had to wait for our buddy to bring Rock Band over. He was playing. Our buddy was one of my guys was playing Doom because he had it, and the story is much more in depth, but actually still calls back to the original Doom games in a way that is really cool. I don't really want to spoil the story or anything, but the gameplay is crazy awesome. It's classic Doom, so running around, jumping, shooting stuff, and gore. It promotes gore in the best way possible. If you get like a really gory kill, you replenish some health. So it's
Oh
pretty great.
man.
The game looks really good. Like it was running at 60 frames per second, and my mind was blown. And speaking of 60 frames per second, the NVIDIA 1080 graphics card that's supposed to be coming out the day before my birthday, by the way,
Oh yeah, I remember
it
you mentioning that.
it it can run Doom at 200 frames per second,
Oh my god.
which is nuts. So yeah, but that got released. Supposedly the single player and multiplayer are two different things, and the multiplayer is pretty mess still, even though it went through a beta where everyone was like, "This is awful." But for the most part, it looks really cool. Might end up getting it, might not. I don't know. But it looked pretty crazy and just gory as hell, which I guess is appropriate for the
Sounds
series.
about right for a Doom game,
Yeah.
honestly. Oops.
Well, anyways, in other words, or in other news, more things that were released on Thursday. Fallout's what was it? Far Harbor. That
Far
was
Harbor.
done.
Yep.
Far
The
Harbor
Far
got
Harbor
released.
DLC.
Yeah. What is that DLC about? I don't actually know.
Um, I I don't remember. It has something to do vaguely. I vaguely remember it has something to do with Oh, Valentine, Nick Valentine, that
Gotcha.
the synth detective
Yeah, he's the guy
thing.
you go
Yeah,
to help find your son in the beginning.
yeah. Um, it has something to do with his past, I believe, if I'm vaguely remembering correctly.
Cool.
But it takes you farther up the East Coast. Up, I think it said more so like farther up into Massachusetts or something. So
Oh, gotcha. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, the guys at work were talking about it. There was like a section of it, or like everything in Far Harbor was like irradiated, so be careful, or something like that. I don't remember what they were saying, but
Uh,
uh, sounds interesting. You can get that if you didn't get the season pass for the cheap price of what was it, like $30 when we were talking about it.
yep.
You'll have to buy it for whatever it's going for. I don't actually know.
60.
Is it really? Oh, the season
Yep.
passes. I thought I was talking about Far Harbor, but yeah,
Oh, Far Harbor. Far Harbor is I think 25.
yeah. So rather expensive if you didn't get that original season pass price. Uh,
Yeah.
One more point I want to talk about really fast, right before we get into our main point of the day, which I have not said yet, and it'll probably be in the title of the episode, but I won't say it till now, or until in a few minutes from now. Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront. You might have heard my distaste for the game, even though I was a big Battlefront fan, like the original Battlefront games, and was super excited for this game and wrote a post about the beta. It turns out, while the game did not have a campaign in it, and many thought this was possibly a conscious decision by them to just focus on the multiplayer, it was supposed to have a campaign, but because of the release date of Star Wars Force Awakens and the development schedule and overall position of the game before The Force Awakens came out, wouldn't allow for the campaign to be released.
Ooh,
So
that's
I
interesting.
hate the game less now because they wanted to have a campaign, even though. I mean, the reason I hated the game is because it was just multiplayer with like 10 maps, and then they sold you $15 map packs for like 60 or more dollars. So it was once it was said and done, you basically paid for the game twice,
Yeah.
and it was like this isn't even a full game in the begin with. That's what I was upset about, and it turns out it should have been a full game, but because of schedules in terms of releasing close to a movie and upper level stuff that wasn't related to the developers, I forgive them in some sense. So
It's all's right in the world of Star Wars now.
I
Well,
mean, I'm still
Battlefront.
not gonna play it, but anyways, all right. So, do you have anything else you want to add in terms of news or anything before we hop into this big news piece that I really want to cover?
Nope. None that I can think of.
All right. Okay. So, another game that got released this past week was Uncharted 4. If you don't know what Uncharted 4 or Uncharted is, it's a series developed by Naughty Dog about Nathan. Is it Nathan Drake? Is that his
Yep.
name? Okay. And he kind of just like does treasure hunting and stuff. And there's obviously been 3 games before this. Each
Think
game,
of think of something like Indiana Jones, only
yeah,
more so in a video game
and kind of
format.
mixed with Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider, actually, that's an even better.
Yeah, they basically when it
Even
was
better.
first announced, like the original Uncharted, they called it Tomb Raider with a guy. Uh, I
All
mean,
right.
I forget what the actual name was, but it was basically like, oh, so you guys are just gonna make Tomb Raider with a dude? Good job. But anyways, each game up until this point, well, actually, and including this point, have been released to critical acclaim. Great game, great games, all of them. You know, Uncharted 2, whatever that was called. What was it, like a Thief's End or something like that? No, that's Uncharted 4 is a
Oh,
Thief's
that's
End.
yep. I don't
Uh,
remember.
Nonetheless, Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 were all critically acclaimed, great, and like everybody loves them. And when they said Uncharted 4 will be the end of it, you know, everyone's like, oh, but it should be great. And it released to pretty much ridiculously great reviews. If you go to Metacritic right now and look for Uncharted 4, it'll show a Metascore of 93. And if you click into it, you will see positive, mixed, and negative reviews, like how many there are, or how many there are. There are 97 positive reviews. That's a pretty good number, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, Grunt, give me a guess at how many negative reviews you think there are.
Well, with that kind of rating, you would assume there wouldn't be any.
Yeah, there probably wouldn't be any, except there's one. And I am not kidding. There are 0 mixed reviews, 97 positive reviews, and 1 negative. And this one negative comes from a guy a guy whose name is Michael Thompson, who writes for the Huffington Post. And I heard about this earlier in the week from the Philip DeFranco show, and thought this would be a really good topic to delve more into than he did, because on his show he tends to just kind of be like, "Hey, what is your thoughts?" This is something we've talked about before, but basically what happened is he released this review, and anybody who loved the series and a lot of the dedicated fans started a petition to get his review changed or removed. And if you think that's crazy, hold on, because Troy Baker, of all people, the guy who voices Nathan Drake, right? Pretty sure he does. Tell me I'm wrong.
No.
I thought he did.
It's oh god, Nolan North, I believe, does Nathan Drake.
Okay, well, Troy Baker, nonetheless, the other guy who voices everyone else in video games, also backed this petition. Now, I don't know if this was just him trying to be funny or if he truly meant it, but that's a very interesting point of this petition. Now, as of recording this, the review is still online. I don't know what has happened with the petition. I didn't necessarily find it, but it is the review is still up. It has yet to be changed. And I think a couple other outlets like Polygon and Kotaku decided to cover this guy and talk about his reviews and stuff. I don't want to get into that too much because that's their piece, but I want to talk about the backlash of this. So the reasoning behind having a petition wasn't because they were mad at him giving it a bad score because they thought it was the best game ever. They were mad at the fact that everyone else says it's the best game ever. Literally, everybody else that is on Metacritic said it was the best game ever. 97 out of 98 said yeah. And he's the one that didn't say yes. So their reasoning was a review shouldn't be opinioned. It shouldn't be an opinion piece to say what you did and didn't like. It should be a reflection of what the game is essentially what they were trying to say. And I get that. You should be able to sit there and say, this game is very good because of XYZ. But if he didn't like the game, he can't control whether or not he likes it or not. So I see both sides of this argument, but I am not at all in support of this petition. I don't know
Yeah,
if you are, Grunt. I don't think you are, because I pretty much know your opinion on it. We've written about reviews before on our site.
right. And you know, I before I started writing for you, several years ago, I used to write reviews for a smaller independent game site. We were
Mm-hmm.
trying to, grow up and all that stuff, become like the next Polygon or Kotaku or wherever. So I used to write reviews. So I would like to consider myself versed in that aspect, at least enough to where I have a general understanding of what to do and not do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like you, I see both sides of this argument basically. If in my mind, you should look at the game from a technical aspect and say, oh yeah, this is what is very good about the game.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's like any like product review on Amazon or any web's online storefront website.
Yeah.
Um, when you look at all those product reviews, you're basically saying what you like and what you don't like about the product.
Mm-hmm.
This is no different in that aspect. You're
Yeah.
the author of the review is saying, this is what I liked about the game. This is what I didn't like about the game. And if what he didn't like far outweighs what he did like, of course it's going to be a bad review. So I don't I don't know. It's tricky. And
So I'm trying to pull up my. I know the last time we wrote about reviews was something I wrote, and uh, the best way to put it is I remember. I mean, this is really far back. I'm just not going to bother at this point. I remember when I wrote this piece, it was basically saying if you're reading a review and you take it as absolute fact, you're doing it wrong. And my whole entire point was trying to get across that reviews are opinions, even if they should be reflections. Reviews should be what you liked, what you didn't like, and if you are a credible source, like someone who's reviewed hundreds of games and tend to have been reliable in your reasoning and not a complete idiot by saying, this game was terrible because it did XYZ, and then everyone else is like, either it didn't do XYZ or what you're saying is just wrong, then you could be a credible source. Now, everyone has a different liking in their video game. Everyone likes certain things in their game. They like certain aspects of certain games. That's why some people love The Legend of Zelda, some people hate it. Yet a lot of people say it's one of the best games ever made. I for one have
right,
never played it, so I'm not going to comment on that, which I don't want to admit I've never played it because then you'll be like, "Oh my god, how can you talk about video games not playing it?" Typical internet backlash, but whatever. I've come to realize more recently that I like games that are more simple to approach but have enough depth in them to keep me interested. Maybe that's why I didn't like Final Fantasy because it was just like all this crap was thrown at me, and I was like, I'm already overwhelmed and don't want to do this. Yet for
right,
some reason I can sit here and play Magic, which is this super in-depth game. But more to the point, I like games that can be simple to approach, but have enough depth to where I'm very interested. Like I said, other people might like maybe Grunt likes games that may not be so simple. They may be complex and are super complex the more you get into it and have a deep, enriching story. And that's just not who I am. So if I play a game like that and I feel overwhelmed and don't want to play it, my opinion isn't going to be, man, I can see where this game would be amazing, but I hate it. And it might, I mean, that truly could be my opinion. But my point is, if I'm writing a review about the game that is super complex, super deep, and amazing in terms of graphical fidelity and all this other stuff, if I'm going to sit here and say, I didn't really play it, but I definitely think it's a good game because it looked good, that's not a credible review. You want someone who's played through it and has a set opinion on it.
Right.
So with this guy, Michael, he played through the game, and I read through a little bit of his review to give you a recap. He essentially thinks that it's kind of an unnecessary game because it's like trilogy didn't need to continue, and it typically doesn't have the best story, and what it tries to show you is beautiful visuals. But this guy's opinion is realistic visuals in the video game can be sometimes dumb or pointless, and it shouldn't be the end all be all of your game. And that's kind of his point to this game. Having not played any of the Uncharted games and only seeing gameplay, I can definitely say they are very visual and very great.
Oh yeah.
I don't know about the story. I know little bits and pieces of it. Like I know some plot twists in the first couple games. I don't want to say anything about, but uh, I don't think it's justified to sit here and say this guy should change his review because everyone else thinks it's good and he doesn't, and he's wrong.
All right.
Because
And
it's an opinion. That's what a review is. I don't think a review should ever be an end all be all. If you take one review, for instance, in music, there are a lot of bands that I really enjoy, and because of the type of music I listen to, I tend to listen to a lot of different types of metal. There are a lot of people with super opinionated beliefs and super opinionated just everything, to where, uh, like this band that's called, I think they're actually called Haken, but I call them Haken. They mixed one of their first album. They mixed polka and death metal. It sounds hilarious, and it was, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And I love your face right now. You're just like, what the hell is that? They mixed those,
polka and metal.
and
I think.
after I listened to the album a couple times, I was like kind of setting my mind like this is one of the greatest albums I've ever listened to. The album was called Aquarius. If you're curious, I think it's called Aquarius. All I know is Celestial Elixir. Celestial Elixir is the best song on the album. Like 20 minutes long, but it's freaking great. Anyways, I listened to this album a couple times and thought, man, this is probably the greatest thing I've ever heard. And I went on to a metal review site. I was like, I wonder what other people think. See, is there something that I'm missing that makes this album not so great, or did I miss an in-depth piece that makes it even cooler? And there was this one dude who gave it a 0 out of 100, stating this is not metal, this is just stupid. And he was just like, this is the worst thing I've ever listened to. I didn't listen to that review. I was like, I think he's wrong. But everybody's so mad because this guy gives it a 40 out of 100, and it dings it down from a 99 to a 93 or whatever it did. And they start a petition because, this guy has an opinion that they just don't agree with. And that just really
Right.
upsets me that that's all this guy's trying to do is say, or all he's trying to say is just, I didn't like it. Others might, but it's just not something I liked, and it tries too hard in many places. Trying to take everyone out of their whole suspended disbelief, if you will, where a game comes out and you're so excited about it that you just can't see straight. And maybe he's trying to
Right.
bring them back and say, looking back in 5 years, will you still think this? I think that is part of what he's trying to say.
Yeah. Um. I mean, reviews. They are. Uh, it's pretty cut and dry. They are someone's opinion on a game. Like you said earlier, if I asked you about what do you think about this game, and you said, "Oh, it's great. Oh, it's amazing. I absolutely love it." You'll probably like it. Um, but I play it. It's not my kind of game. I'm just like, I didn't care much for it. You're gonna start up a petition and have me change my opinion on it.
Probably depends on if it's Halo 2, then I definitely would do that. But and this could be some people's Halo 2. Looking at that. If you don't get that reference, I'm a humongous fan of Halo 2. It's my favorite game ever. So this could be a similar situation where it's just like I love this game so much that nothing can be said bad about it. And if you do say something bad about it, I'm going to start a petition. Now, I loved Halo 2 back in 2004, 2005 when the internet wasn't as big of a thing and petitions weren't really something we could just freely start and get backed, similar to Kickstarter. But I think my point still stands. Even if this is, someone's new favorite game, even though it's only been out for like a week, I think it's just it is wrong to sit here and say this guy is wrong for having an opinion.
Right. It also does bring up one thing to mind. Another side to this argument could be the fact that maybe he just doesn't like the Uncharted series, and that could be affecting his outlook on the game. So I've seen that happen in
Well,
reviews published on some larger sites. It doesn't happen that often, and normally that person doesn't ever write about that game again. It's just like, you need to write about this game for your assignment here, and they're like,
mm,
oh well, all right.
when I think about that, maybe what if they got someone different on the job? Maybe because this is from the Washington Post, by the way. If those of you don't, I didn't mention it, and if you hadn't read it, you now know. I wonder if it's something where I know if I were in their position and I needed someone to write about this, I wouldn't pick the guy who didn't like the series. Like
Oh, right.
like if I wanted you to write me a piece on, oh Lord, Call of Duty, I wouldn't do that because I know for a fact you don't really like the Call of Duty series. I'm not going to sit there and say, hey, that game you just don't like? You should go review it real quick for me.
I mean,
It's,
I'd do it if
it's
it
going
was
to
my job.
be,
I'd do it, but
in a good day, it's going to be a 6 out of 10 in my mind. So it's
yeah,
like, I don't know. So if he doesn't like the Uncharted series, I feel like I don't want
right,
to say he had a choice. Maybe he didn't. But I feel like if he didn't like the Uncharted series, he probably shouldn't have done this review.
right.
Um, and
I
maybe he
that's
wanted to
why
do it to just try and get people to see it from his point of view. Maybe.
yeah, that's why I don't think that's necessarily the case here in this situation. But you know, that is something else to throw out there to maybe think about when listening back on this.
Hmm.
So
I mean, I guess I shouldn't say, if you don't like a game, don't review it because it could
sometimes you
be,
don't have a choice. Yeah,
yeah, either you don't have a choice or, I just thought about it literally if I told you to go review Call of Duty, thinking about it in terms of what if this game is Call of Duty and this guy's reviewing it and it gets this amount of backlash. It's like sometimes there are games that just get, I can't think of the right word, but people blindly play them and don't think about how they're just carbon copies. So, each Madden every year typically is the same game in a sense, but I think
right.
Madden's been a little more innovative. Call of Duty is another one that people love to harp on because it's just quote unquote copy pasta. But you ever heard that used before, copy pasta?
Oh yes,
Okay, just wanted to make sure. It
oh
was something
yes,
I
I
hadn't
have.
heard till like a year or two ago. But anyways, uh, no, and maybe you're someone who is of a strong opinion that you should appreciate games that are more to the art and more to the art form of making a video game and more to the creative aspect of it. Like for instance, to give a quick example, my girlfriend, she enjoys going to superhero movies and loves them. I mean, my back wall behind me is posted with Batman stuff, so you can assume we like superheroes in this household. She loves
Good
going to the,
assumption.
an assumption, yes. She loves going to the Marvel movies, not nearly as much as me, but she also feels that in a way they're losing the heart behind them because they just keep churning them out and keep adding more people to the roster and making these big budget movies in order to make more
Right,
and more money. And you could
right,
see that as potentially being greedy and maybe not respecting the source art or the source material, even though I think they've done a very good job of that. But that's her opinion that maybe they're doing that. And so if you're someone who looks at Call of Duty and thinks that it's not at all respecting the art form that is video games uh, or the creative realm that is video games, you just don't see Call of Duty as that and you see it as a cash grab, which I wouldn't try to argue that statement. If you're someone who sees it like that, maybe you want to write a review that says this game is literally just about trying to get you to buy it, and then the fans that are dedicated to it would lash out at you. I don't know if this is a similar situation because I don't think Uncharted is a game that they're trying to grab money from, considering they said this would be the last one. I don't think they said that about Uncharted 3, and they actually like no, I know what Naughty Dog has put out. They actually care about their games and the people and the
oh yeah,
response to it and everything.
oh yeah.
So it could be that. I don't think it is, but keep that in mind whenever you're reading certain reviews. That might be another aspect of it where they strongly feel that this game is just an insult to the realm of video games and that you should rethink your purchase and playing and enjoyment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't think of anything else really to add beyond that. We kind of just agree on this that it's an opinion.
Yeah,
You
that
can't force someone to
person
change that.
that yeah, that person is entitled to his opinion. on that game just as much as everyone else is that absolutely loves the game. So,
And this isn't to
and
say you can't change someone's opinion. I'm just saying in the world of video game reviews, uh, you seldom find facts that you can cling to.
right.
It's like
So,
it's like saying Resident Evil 5 was a terrible game because Resident Evil 4 was so good. It's like, well, that's an opinion. You can't judge it based on stuff besides the fact that Resident Evil 4 was survival horror, Resident Evil 5 was not. I
mm,
don't really know how to describe Resident Evil 5, but similar idea there.
it's there.
Yeah. So take that with what you will. It's an interesting story. I don't know if anything else will surface from it for us to touch on it maybe next week, but we're getting close to our time limit here, which I think that actually was very good in terms of
It
keeping it
was
under our 45-minute limit that we wanted to do.
almost
Anyways,
like we planned it.
yeah, I know, right? Uh, I thought that was very interesting because we talked about it before. It was a good piece to hit on because there are still people who will just look at one review and take it as the absolute truth. They might be in the minority, but with this outlash, I feel like the larger minority than we might have thought.
Yeah. Also, online petitions don't change much of anything. They don't actually work in when they're
Unfortunately,
on something like this. So,
yeah, unfortunately. So, it sucks for this guy because he gets all this backlash, but
right.
I guess that's what that's the things
That's
you face when you're a video game reviewer.
yeah, yeah. So
So,
that's a
okay.
thing.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us then. Do you want to go ahead and get the advertising out of the way?
Yes, I can, and I'll do much better at it this week than I did last week.
So I'm slowly pawning all my responsibilities off onto Grunt.
Yeah, I'll
Uh,
be hosting this podcast
yep.
one year
Like a year
by
from now, I
myself.
won't even be here.
Yeah,
I'll be like drinking
yeah,
martinis in Florida or something.
yeah.
I'd
Getting
never go to
backlash about
Florida.
bad video game reviews.
All right. Anyways, kick it off there, bud.
All right. If you want to follow along with our ramblings on Twitter, you can find him at FranticJ3 on
Oh my
Twitter.
god. Oh, I wish you could see what I just did. Oh, I shouldn't be laughing at myself. You pointed over, and at the exact same time, because I was thinking advertising, I had my seltzer water, and I just put my hand under it and freeze framed myself as like a spokesperson for it. Like you can find him, and I'm just like water.
Oh my god.
If
Oh
you're
man.
listening to the audio version, go watch the video version just for that. I'm gonna
Oh
make
my
that the
god.
thumbnail.
You
Man, that
should.
was really funny. Anyways, you can find me on Twitter. Where?
At FranticJ3.
All right.
You can find me as at Onyx Spartan, ONYX, Spartan, as you would normally think it would be spelled. You can also find, if you don't want, our personal ramblings and you just want to follow along with what Frantic talks about, you can find us at frantic_talks over on Twitter, over there. If you're on Facebook, if that's your thing, it's facebook.com/frantic talks.
/, but yeah, all one word.
/ all right, wrong direction, but hey,
What
I
an
often get my
awful
left
band.
and my right confused, so
Oh, I burped.
you're not helping with this.
I gotta train you somehow.
Yeah. Oh, anyways, if social media isn't your thing, you can find us at the mothership at frantictalks.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the podcast goes up every normally Sunday, Monday.
Typically Sunday. It's been Monday, but
So
aim for
you can find
Sunday.
yep, you can find us over there. We post our other articles up over there too. Earlier in this episode of the podcast, Frantic mentioned Magic. You can find that section of the site where him and Luke write articles over there, and now he has his own podcast over there. Magic.frantictalks.com. If you want to watch the podcast live every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, it's FranticJ3, twitch.tv/FranticJ3 the third. Forgot that first part.
Nah, you're good. Could have just said on Twitch. I think people would have gotten it, but yeah.
Yeah, and why is it the third?
Oh, it's Frank J3 the third because some bastard took Frank J3.
There you go.
I'll start an online petition to get my name back.
There you go. That'll work. You can also find the video version of this on YouTube. It's just some weird. The URL for it now is just some weird massive string of numbers and letters thrown together.
I feel like I'm just gonna memorize it to say it. Like it's 11675237.
You should do that.
have it like open in the other screen. Okay, I'll do that.
Yep.
Yeah, / user / some other crap. Yeah, and
There
that's
you go.
basically it. That's where you can find us. I can't think of anything else, right?
Um, iTunes, Frantic Talks.
Yep, iTunes, and you'll get both podcasts there because I haven't started a different RSS feed to feed in my magic one on a different location. So
There
I
you go.
probably will do that at some point. But right now, you're just gonna get all our podcasts. So sorry
Yep.
if anybody doesn't like that. If I get enough backlash about it, I'll change it. But whatever.
No, you need a petition first.
Yeah, you're gonna have to give me a petition to change that. Just so you know.
Oh,
All
not
right.
yet. All right,
Okay. Well,
but that is it.
I think that's it for this week, guys. If you looked at the time code and saw that we're at 45 minutes and counting, hey, we did our job. We're trying to keep it under 45, roughly, or close to that realm. So awesome. I think that went
No
really
more,
well.
no more
And
hour and a half podcasts.
yeah, this is half that time. And it feels like we should keep talking, and that's maybe why I'm still rambling. But uh,
It is. It definitely is.
it's more time for us to do stuff. All right. Anyways, okay, guys. So like you said, Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, you can catch us live. So I'll see you next time. I think that about wraps up. So I'm Frantic.
I'm Grunt.
We will see you guys next time.